Chris Horner's win in the 2013 Vuelta a Espana is one of the most controversial and exciting wins in the history of professional cycling. At almost 42 years of age, the oldest cyclist, the American from Radioshack, beat Vincenzo Nibali, Alejandro Valverde and Joaquim Rodriguez on one of the toughest Grand Tour parcours in all of cycling, including the Stage 20 finish on the Angliru. Who is Chris Horner? How did he win the Vuelta a Espana? And was it all too good to be true? Chris Horner is American, but was born in Japan while his dad was stationed in Okinawa. At 13 years of age, the Horner family moved to San Diego. It was here he picked up cycling while working at Howe's Bike Center. Following his high school graduation, he was laid off from his construction job, leading him to ride his bike more and more as he was unemployed. In 1995, he turned pro with the Panu Traffic team. However, Chris Horner isn't your typical pro cyclist. Usually, every cyclist would be counting calories, eating pasta day in and day out, but it's no secret that Chris Horner had an urge to eat and drink what he fancied, especially if that happened to be Snickers, Coca-Cola and hamburgers. During the US Olympic trials of 1996, Frankie Andreo said this about Horner: "I couldn't get him off my wheel." And when the Times went to interview the relatively new prospect Horner about this comment after the race, he was found with a hot dog in his mouth. Horner was left off the US Olympic team, despite finishing 4th in the selection series. The rumour was that he couldn't be relied on to support Lance Armstrong in the race. After this disappointment, Chris Horner moved to Europe to ride for Francis Deschamps. Although he struggled to adapt, and without any major results in his 2-year span, he reluctantly moved back to America. This is what Horner said to CyclingNews about his stint in Europe: "It's really hard when you're there and you want to be in the States, and when you're in the States, you want to be there." He achieved good success while back in America, taking the leader's jersey of Tour of Georgia, ahead of the likes of David Zabriskie and Tom Danielson. He wins back-to-back Redlands Bicycle Classics while also taking a heap of stage wins. Horner finished 8th in the 2004 UCI World Championships and 11th in the Il Lombardia. These results led him to be signed on a 1-year contract late in 2004 with Sonia Duval. He rides his first Tour de France in 2005, with the best result being 9th on the stage. But his European results are getting better, even finishing 5th overall in Tour de Suisse after taking a stage win on stage 6 ahead of Vincenzo Nibali. Chris Horner's results continued to improve year on year. He rode briefly for Lotto Silence in the support of Cadel Evans at the Tour, and Horner himself finished 15th in his 3rd Tour de France. But slow burner Horner was now already over 30 years of age, so one could assume he might never become better than this. As he moves to Astana, where the co-captains Alberto Contador and Lance Armstrong await, things take a turn for the worse in Horner's career, which slowed down his progress. He breaks his collarbone in Tour of Elk Grove late in 2008. Then he breaks his collarbone again, plus his ribs at Vuelta a País Vasco early 2009. Horner races the Giro d'Italia, yet crashes on stage 10, finishing the stage but abandoning the next day, and is later diagnosed with a fractured tibia. Last but not least, Chris crashes on stage 4 of the Vuelta a Espana and fractures his wrist. Overall, a couple of years to forget, summarized by the fact he asked Johan Brynil for an early release to seek a new team for the next season, ultimately denied by the sports director. In 2010, Chris Horner signs with newly founded American team Radioshack. He adorned success at País Vasco, Amgen Tour of California, Romandy and Tour of Utah. This all leads up to the infamous 2013 Vuelta a Espana general classification win. In the 2013 season, Chris Horner had finished 6th overall in the Tirreno Adriatico and 2nd overall in Tour of Utah, winning stage 5. In Horner's own words, he said,
"Now when I arrived at the Vuelta, I told the team I can go top 10. I told my wife I can podium. I was training really strong. The power meter was going off the hook. Had about 10-12 days between Utah and the Tour of Spain, and I could feel the effects from the racing at Utah into the training. I was motivated and ready to go when I arrived at Spain."
The route featured a grueling 11 mountaintop finishes and pro cycling's second hardest climb at the very end, the Angliru. Going into the race, there were 3 clear-cut favourites: Vincenzo Nibali, also known as the Shark, Having won the Giro earlier in the year, he was going for the double. Joaquim Rodriguez, also known as Porito, rode the Tour de France, had 5 top 3 finishes, and finished 7th overall in GC. Alejandro Valverde, also known as Bala, similar to Porito, rode the Tour de France and finished 8th in GC. Let it be clear that Chris Horner wasn't on many radars for the leader's jersey going into the race, not even his own team, mainly due to the fact that at this point, he's 41 years old.
I was in fights with the team and management about how the race was going and how much teamwork I had had.
Stage 1 started with a team time trial. Radioshack boasts one of the best time trialists of all time, Fabian Cancellara. Mainly thanks to his efforts, Radioshack finished 2nd on the day, 10 seconds behind Astana and pre-race favourite Nibali. Q Stage 3, a mountaintop finish, 4.4 kilometers in length and 5.3% average. With 1 kilometer to go, BMC's Ivan Santaromita is in the lead. As the camera pans back, you can see Chris Horner with his patented standing up attack style fly out of the front of the peloton. No one follows. No one deems him a threat at this point. He wins the stage and takes the red jersey by 3 seconds. This is what Chris did after the stage.
And I whispered in her ear I can win the Vuelta. She lit up and she's like, really? I said, yes, I'm going to need some luck, of course. You can't have any bad luck.
However, this is what he told his team.
I go back to the team and I tell the team, I can podium at the Vuelta instead of top 10. You always leave yourself a little room with the team, but with your friends, family, the ones closest to you, you tell them the truth of what you're really thinking and what you're really feeling.
The very next stage, Horner would proceed to lose the jersey to Nibali. It was a steep finish to the line. To everyone's slight surprise, Fabian Cancellara comes over the line in 2nd. I lose the red jersey in stage 4 and I'm arguing with the team. Horner unsatisfied with the team's objectives, wanting to win stage wins and satisfy Cancellara, while Chris thinks he has the legs to win the overall classification. On some of the steeper climbs, Chris Horner seemed to struggle, while on the long average gradients he appeared stronger. Stage 9 to Alta de los Frailes had a steep wall at the end over 24% gradients. Danny Moreno bossed the finish again, with Valverde and Rodriguez close behind, but Horner was nowhere to be found, losing 9 seconds to Nibali, now sitting in 5th, 28 seconds behind Moreno and 8 seconds behind Nibali. The sensation of the race so far, Danny Moreno would be spat early on stage 10. With 5 kilometers to go, it was Nibali, Horner, Rodriguez and Basso in the leading group. Horner attacks with 4.5 kilometers to go and no one can follow. He's dancing on the bike, he clearly has diamonds in the legs. 2 kilometers to go, Nibali decides enough is enough and attacks, but at this point, Horner is already 47 seconds ahead. It's a 2nd stage win in the back for Horner and he takes a whopping 58 seconds on Nibali.
Up until the stage 10 win though, I'd been arguing with the team many times, and so after stage 10 I had the whole team behind me.
Just as fast as Horner gained the red jersey, he'd lose it on the time trial the next stage. This meant the GC was shook up once again. Nibali in the lead and Horner in 4th. 46 seconds behind. On the finish to Calada de la Gallina on stage 14, it was a wet and miserable day. With 2 kilometers to go, it was just Horner and Nibali left. Chris Horner did the most of the pacing, while Nibali would come around him on the finish line to take a few more seconds. Horner now sat in 2nd place, 50 seconds back. At this point in the race, Nibali looked to be in complete control. Stage 18 finishes on Penacabaga. Nibali tries to follow the attacks, but you can see the gap opening up. Horner is on his wheel. Chris goes over the top of Nibali and bridges across. Again, the shark is looking more and more like a sea bass, cooked and going backwards. Nibali is giving everything not to lose the wheel. As the group catches up to Simon Clark, he gives Chris Horner some much needed rest. Interestingly, as Clark is not on Horner's team, the cycling loving Spanish fans are everywhere. They're crowding the road, making it so that only places you can attack are in the corners. And that's exactly what Horner does. He stands up the whole way and takes another 25 seconds out of Nibali's lead. Now there's only 3 seconds between them, heading into stage 20. The tactics at Radioshack were up in the air. Team wanted to keep everything under control and not have a big break go up the road. But Horner said,
in the meeting I said there's no way you can control on the last mountain stage of a Grand Tour and limit the size of the break. It's going to be too hard. Everybody is all in on today's stage. It's going to be a big break, there's nothing we can do about it.
And he was right. However, Astana managed to sneak 2 of their riders into the breakaway, Jakob Fuglsang and Paolo Tialongo. both excellent climbers. Radioshack assumed control of the race. On the front was Markel Irizar, the now sports director of Lidl Trek.
And I go, Markel, you got stop riding hard on the flats. You're hurting my legs on the flats. Anytime we go uphill, you can ride as hard as you want.
As they hit the bottom of the climb, Euskaltel, Movistar and Katusha were pacing. At 6 kilometers to go, Nibali puts in his attack. Horner doesn't follow.
Here we go, time for Nibali to roll the dice, and he's kicked off. Now, who can follow him? No response, just for the time being, from Chris Horner.
This is what he had to say about it.
I'm at Disneyland watching this happen. I was like, really? So when he went from the bottom, my eyes just lit up. I was like, perfect, this is fantastic. So you'll watch him attack and you'll see I'm calm and relaxed in the back. I don't even bother following the move. I actually want the move to get a little bit of time so he can dangle out there.
Horner claws back the time gap little by little until after 2 kilometers of chasing, he latches back onto the Italian's wheel. With 3.7 kilometers to go, it all looks to play for, but Nibali has to be the favourite with his 2 teammates surrounding him. At 3 kilometers to go, Nibali goes again and again and again. He does 7 attacks in a row. When he does the 7th, you'll see my head drop. When my head drops, I quit the race. I gave up. Luckily, it only lasted a second. I thought I'd lost this Vuelta, it's over, but I picked my head up and said, no, you've just got to push harder. Chris Horner and Vincenzo Nibali, 2 gladiators in the Colosseum of cycling, putting on the best display on cycling. Only one question left to ask. Are you not entertained? Nibali keeps riding strong, but he can't shake the American. Not shown on the footage as motorbikes had crashed in the front, Nibali tried to attack one last time. Vincenzo tried to attack me on the left side first, and we're on the 22 to 24% section. It's extremely difficult. It's a huge effort in slow motion. Every turn of the pedal stroke is hurting the legs. With the motorcycle crash and the fans, they'd narrow the road so much, I only had to move over 6 inches, so Nibali had to hit the brakes and drop behind me. As Vincenzo attacks on the right, I move back the other 6 inches, and now he doesn't have enough room to clear the motorcycles, so he has to hit the brakes and go behind me again. When the cameras finally catch back up to the front, it's Horner leading. He saw the exact moment he wanted to attack, as they were catching some breakaway riders. Horner uses them as shelter from the draft of Nibali. He can't stay on the wheel without having to go around them, a tactically genius move by Chris Horner, one that would win him the race in the red jersey.
Just taking out almost the camera, and has Nibali been taken out here as well?
No, I
don't think there was any contact with anybody. He's just gone pop.
As he opens up the gap, he increases his power. I go from 400 watts to 420 watts. I averaged 390 watts for 40 minutes on this climb. At almost 42 years of age, Chris Horner, the oldest man in the race, wins his first and only Grand Tour, the 2013 Vuelta a Espana. Needless to say, the crowd reaction to Chris Horner's win was mixed. Looming over this result was the Lance Armstrong saga that was going on at the time. It didn't help Chris's cause that less than 6 hours after being on the podium in Madrid, anti-doping authorities couldn't find him to take a test sample. A team doctor said that Horner was in a different hotel closer to the airport with his wife, but the AEPSAD agents left the second hotel empty-handed. On September 25th, Horner released his bio-passport data to the public. 6 years of data meant as a transparency token to clear any doubts, but regretfully for Horner, it had the opposite effect. Chris Horner's blot values during the Vuelta better fit with the patterns that anti-doping authorities look for as a sign of cheating. Your next question may be, what was Horner thinking? In an interview with Velo News, Horner stated that when you win a Grand Tour, there's a lot of skepticism that surrounds it. So I nipped it in the bud, here's the results, and it's all done. Even further clouds appeared over Horner's results when it was speculated that Chris was the redacted rider named in Christian van der Velde and Levi Leipheimer's sworn affidavits. In his statement, Van der Velde recalls that during the World Championships in Valkenburg, Holland, he was handed cortisone by Armstrong's ex-wife before the start of the men's road race. The USADA report lists the US men's team from that race, however, it doesn't differentiate as to which riders were handed cortisone and which weren't. The result still stands to this day, and Chris Horner is experiencing success as a media personality, most renowned for his YouTube channel where he does breakdown of stages. However, we like to leave you on this correspondence between Horner and CyclingNews. There's been a lot of stuff on Twitter that you may or may not have been aware of over the last few weeks. A lot of speculations, a lot of unfair, but one of the points was to claim that you are the redacted name number 15 in the USADA report. Do you know anything about that? No, I don't know anything about that. I'd have to read up on it or something. I can give you the quote very quickly, as I know you're pressed for time. It's in Levi Leipheimer's affidavit, and it says, Daniel, I'm getting ready to drive right now, so there's nothing I'm going to know on that. You have to get a hold of me another time because I'm on the phone and they're going to give me a ticket if I'm driving with it on the phone. Can I just ask one last question? I'm driving with the phone and I'm going to get a ticket.
An hour later, CyclingNews called Horner for a second time.
I'm busy right now. We'll have to try another time. Thanks. Are you free later on this evening? No, I've just got home from doing the tour of Spain, Daniel. I've got 3 kids here and I'm done with the interview. I've already done 200 or something like that. How come you didn't come to Spain? I'll let you go. I'm gonna spend some time at home. Bye bye.